Tate got home a little after 6 on Monday from his economics class, right on schedule as he usually did. The door clicked, the faint echo of his footsteps coming down the hall, and I braced myself for the familiar tension that always accompanied his presence. Karma had never been something Tate believed in. He believed in leverage, in power, in controlling outcomes before outcomes had the chance to control him. Standing in the doorway of their dorm that evening, keys still in his hand, Tate felt something unfamiliar settle into his chest, a slow, creeping realization that the world around him was shifting in ways he had not planned for. And he hated it. At first, it was something small. So small that another person might not have noticed it at all. Noah's hair. Tate stood there longer than necessary, eyes narrowing slightly as Noah moved around the kitchen like nothing had changed. The haircut wasn't dramatic. Noah still looked like Noah, but something about it was sharper now, cleaner, more deliberate, intentional. The soft familiarity Tate had grown used to was gone. Noah's blonde hair had always fallen in that easy, careless way that made him look younger than he actually was. Tate had liked that. It made Noah seem stable, predictable, the same boy who had always existed beside him, but this cut was different. It was shorter and Tate hated it. It made Noah look older, more self-possessed, sexy, and desirable, more like someone who had made a decision about how he wanted to look rather than simply accepting what had always been. Tate's eyes lingered longer than he meant them to. "Did you get a haircut?" he asked casually, trying to make the question sound like an afterthought. Noah didn't even look up. "Yeah," he said lightly, figured it was time. Time, the word landed oddly in Tate's mind. Time for what? Noah moved around the kitchen easily, stirring something on the stove, completely unaware, or pretending to be unaware of the way Tate was studying him. The haircut wasn't the only thing. The jacket Noah was wearing wasn't one Tate had ever seen before. It was darker, fitted differently. Something about the cut made Noah's shoulders look broader, his posture straighter. It wasn't flashy, but it was noticeable. It looked like something someone else might have picked out for him. Tate's emotional development had stalled years ago. Even the smallest, most ordinary changes could feel like genuine threats to his sense of security. While most people adapted without a second thought, Tate depended on routine to keep his world stable. When something familiar changed, it felt as though the ground beneath him had shifted. Noah's appearance had become one of those constants. His clothes, his familiar vocabulary, and especially his blonde hair reassured Tate that everything was still the way it was supposed to be. To Tate, Noah's blonde hair had always been his best feature. The longer it was, the better. When Noah had it trimmed, not dramatically, but enough for Tate to notice, it felt far more significant than a simple haircut. If Tate could have gathered every clipped strand from the barbershop floor and placed it back on Noah's head, he would have done so without hesitation. To everyone else, it was just a haircut. To Tate, it represented something much larger. Every change in Noah's appearance stirred fears that Noah was changing as a person, growing beyond him, or becoming closer to someone else. Beneath Tate's frustration was an unspoken fear that he would no longer be Noah's first priority. No one realized how deeply the haircut affected him. Tate complained about it for weeks, disguising his anxiety as criticism. Even after everyone else had forgotten about it, he found himself staring at Noah's shorter hair as though it had personally betrayed him, a constant reminder that even the people he depended on could change, whether he was ready or not. When they were children, Tate had often talked Noah out of getting haircuts. More often than not, Noah had happily gone along with it. If Tate begged him not to cut his hair, Noah would laugh, grin at Talia, and say, "Not this week." Back then, Noah had loved making Tate happy. But this time was different. Noah had gotten a haircut without even mentioning it to Tate. He hadn't asked what Tate thought, he hadn't warned him, he had simply done it. To everyone else, it was a routine haircut. To Tate, it felt like a line had been crossed. If Tate had been given the choice, he would have forbidden Noah from ever cutting his hair. He adored Noah's blonde hair. The longer it was, the better. Watching it disappear, even a few inches, left him with the unsettling feeling that something far more important had been taken away. The haircut wasn't really about hair. It was about what it represented. Tate couldn't shake the feeling that he was being replaced, pushed aside, slowly displaced in Noah's life. Someone else's influence had become stronger than his own. And Tate thought he knew exactly which bastard was responsible. Mark. In Tate's mind, it had to be Mark. The new clothes, the new haircut, the subtle changes in Noah's style, they all pointed to the same conclusion. Tate became convinced that Mark had encouraged every one of them. Whether it was true hardly mattered. Once the idea settled into Tate's mind, it became impossible to dislodge. As far as Tate was concerned, Mark wasn't just changing Noah's appearance. He was stealing Noah away from him, one small change at a time. Tate hated that thought the moment it appeared. Someone else. He set his keys down harder than necessary. "New jacket too?" Tate asked. Noah glanced over his shoulder with a faint smile. "Yeah, thought I'd try something different." Different? The word echoed uncomfortably in Tate's mind. Different from what? Different from who? Tate didn't say anything else, but the feeling had already begun. That quiet, irritating pressure in his chest meant his mind was starting to spin. That was when Tate noticed it. The red jacket. Recognition hit him instantly. He had seen it before. Noah had borrowed it from Mark more than once, and now, seeing it again, Tate no longer viewed it as just another piece of clothing. To him, it had become a symbol. A symbol of Mark's growing influence over Noah. Tate's stomach tightened. The jacket represented everything he feared, that Mark was slowly becoming part of Noah's everyday life, replacing the familiar routines Tate had always depended on. Every time Noah wore it, Tate felt as though Mark's presence had entered the room without ever saying a word. The jacket had to go. Tate found himself thinking that if Noah wouldn't get rid of it, perhaps he would have to make it disappear himself. He couldn't stand the constant reminder that someone else might matter more than he did. Tate resisted change with every fiber of his being. The routines that comforted him, the familiar version of Noah he had come to rely on, and the life he believed they shared all seemed to be slipping away. The jacket was only one piece of fabric, yet in Tate's mind it stood for something much larger. His thoughts spiraled. Today it was Mark's jacket. Tomorrow Tate imagined Noah might come home driving a car just like Mark's, talking like Mark, dressing like Mark, becoming someone Tate barely recognized. Whether those fears were realistic no longer mattered. In Tate's mind, Mark's influence was spreading one small change at a time, and Tate wanted every reminder of it, every symbol that seemed to pull Noah farther away, out of Noah's life. Tate noticed patterns, and the patterns were starting to shift. It wasn't just the haircut. Over the next few days, the small changes multiplied. Different shirts, a new pair of boots, a watch Noah had never worn before. Each one by itself could have been meaningless. Together, they formed something Tate couldn't ignore. Noah was changing, not gradually, not accidentally, deliberately. And the worst part was the question Tate couldn't stop asking himself: who helped him do it? The answer sat in the back of his mind like poison. Mark. Ever since Mark had entered Noah's life, the same day Noah had skipped their planned blockbuster movie marathon, Tate had quietly blamed him for everything that followed. In Tate's mind, that was the day everything began to unravel. Before Mark, Noah had always seemed available. Weekends were for movies, late-night conversations, and the comforting routines Tate had come to depend on. After Mark, those routines steadily disappeared. Noah wasn't available 24 hours a day anymore. Between classes at Brown University, studying, friends, and a growing social life, finding time together became increasingly difficult. Most days, the only time Tate and Noah occupied the same space was while they were asleep under the same roof or passing each other briefly in the kitchen. To anyone else, it looked like an ordinary part of growing up. To Tate, it felt like abandonment. Every hour Noah spent with classmates or friends seemed, in Tate's mind, like an hour stolen from him. Tate resented having to compete with people who had entered Noah's life years after he had. He wanted things to go back to the way they had always been, when he never had to wonder where Noah was or who he was spending time with. The jealousy simmered beneath the surface, growing stronger with each passing week. More than anything, Tate hated sharing Noah. Tate tried to dismiss the thought, but it kept returning, because Mark was exactly the kind of person who would notice those things. The kind of person who would casually suggest better clothes, a sharper haircut, a different way of carrying yourself. Mark had that irritating confidence about him, and now Noah was starting to look like someone who had spent time around that confidence. Tate found himself watching Noah more closely, watching the way he moved, the way he spoke, the way he seemed calmer. That was the part Tate hated most. Noah used to orbit him, there had always been a subtle awareness in Noah's behavior, a sensitivity to Tate's moods, Tate's reactions, Tate's presence. But lately Noah seemed steadier, more independent, as if his emotional balance no longer depended entirely on Tate's gravity, and that terrified him more than he wanted to admit. The photographs appeared a week later. Tate noticed the first one without realizing he was noticing it. It sat on a small shelf near the window. At first glance it looked like any ordinary photo. Two people standing somewhere outdoors, sunlight catching the edge of the frame, but then Tate's brain processed the faces, and everything inside him went still. Mark. Mark was standing there with Noah, not touching him, not doing anything inappropriate, just standing beside him smiling, but the casual placement of the photo made Tate's stomach twist, because photographs were statements. People didn't put someone's picture in their living space unless that person mattered. Tate stared at it longer than he meant to. Noah walked past him carrying a book and didn't say a word. That silence felt intentional, which meant Noah knew exactly what Tate was looking at, and he was letting him look. Tate turned away first, but the image stayed burned in his mind. Later that evening he found another one. This one was smaller, pinned near Noah's desk. Mark again, different day, different setting. The message was subtle but unmistakable. Mark existed here now, in their space, in Noah's life. Tate's jaw tightened, because suddenly the dorm didn't feel like his territory anymore. It felt like somewhere he had to share. The phone calls after 6 made it worse. The first time it happened, Tate had answered the phone out of habit. Hello. A pause, then a voice he recognized instantly. Hey, is Noah there? Mark. Tate's grip on the receiver tightened. Yeah, Tate said flatly. Noah smirked in the corner, remembering Mark fucking him the day Tate fucked Tina. Noah had sex with Mark not just out of desire, not because it was something he wanted in the conventional sense, but because it was the ultimate act of karma against Tate. Tate's enemy in every imagined way, the one he hated for his status, his audacity, and his closeness to Noah, was the perfect vehicle. It was poetic, a dark kind of karmic symmetry. Tate would never see it, never touch it, never hear it from Noah's lips, but he would imagine it. And Tate's imagination, wild, obsessive, and violent, would be enough. Noah had imagined it 1,000 times over the years, though he had never admitted it out loud, not even to himself in words that clear. Somewhere deep in his heart, quiet and stubborn, there had always been a belief that one day Tate would look at him differently. That one day, the line between what they were and what Noah secretly wished they could be would blur and disappear. And because of that, Noah had imagined that if it ever happened, if Tate ever reached for him in that way, it would mean something profound, something inevitable, like gravity finally doing what gravity always intended to do. If Noah had chosen anyone else, maybe it would have been different, but Mark wasn't just anyone. Mark was the person Tate saw as a threat, the one who stood outside their strange, tightly wound world and looked at it with clear eyes, the one who told Noah things Tate never would, the one who encouraged Noah to have friends, to live outside the gravity of Tate Blue. And somehow, impossibly, he had become the person Noah turned to in the moment Noah's heart finally broke. For Noah, it hadn't been about revenge at first. It had been about pain. About standing in that hallway and seeing Tate with Tina or Emily, realizing that the person he had waited for, patiently, stupidly, faithfully, had chosen someone else right in front of him. The moment cracked something open inside him, and Mark had been there, Mark with his steady voice and open arms, Mark who didn't pretend Noah's feelings were ridiculous, Mark who didn't treat him like a convenience or a constant that would always be there no matter how badly he was treated. Mark had simply seen him, and that was enough. Still, even after it happened, even after the anger cooled and the tears stopped, Noah knew something painful and complicated about it. He hadn't done it because he wanted Mark. Noah liked Mark, but it wasn't the only reason he fucked him. Not really. He had done it because somewhere deep inside him, a part of him wanted Tate to feel the same sharp, twisting pain that Noah had felt in that hallway. The ultimate irony was that Tate would probably never know the truth. And maybe that was the cruelest truth of all. For all the anger, the hurt, the rebellion, Noah still loved Tate, still wanted him, still carried that old, impossible hope buried somewhere in his chest, which meant that the real betrayal wasn't just what happened with Mark. It was the realization that the person Noah had always been waiting for might never come to him at all. Noah knew exactly how Tate's mind worked. Tate would reconstruct the scenario in infinite torturous detail. every motion, every sound, every sigh. He would picture Mark's hands on Noah's body, Mark's heat pressing against him, Noah yielding, vulnerable, intimate, and there would be nothing Tate could do to intervene. Tate's worst nightmare was alive in his imagination, Mark getting into Noah's pants, claiming the physical space that Tate had jealously hoarded for years. Even though it never actually happened the way Tate would picture it, the idea alone, the thought of Noah with another man, of someone else touching him, of Noah's body giving, even symbolically, to someone else, was enough to make Tate's mind combust with jealousy and terror. Tate thought Mark had become the most important person in Noah's life. In Tate's mind, Mark wasn't just someone Noah had spent time with, he had become the person Noah loved, the person Noah chose, the person who had replaced him in the center of Noah's world. And that belief would gnaw at Tate like acid. But the truth was far quieter, almost mundane compared to the drama Tate imagined. Noah didn't love Mark, he liked Mark, Noah idolized Mark. Mark had never been the love of Noah's life, not even close. Mark had been a single night, a moment that happened when Noah realized something painful. The person he had always waited for wasn't going to give him what he needed. So Noah adapted. When Tate wasn't there emotionally, when Tate shut down, when he withdrew into his jealousy or his cruelty or his silence, Noah stopped leaving that space empty. He filled it with other people, friends, conversations, mentors, anyone who could offer the connection Tate refused to give. That was the difference. For years, Noah had centered everything around Tate, orbiting him like a planet around a sun that never quite acknowledged the gravity it held. But once Noah stepped outside that orbit, he discovered something simple and liberating. The world was full of people who could meet him halfway. For once, Noah allowed Tate to sit with uncertainty. And the truth was, what existed between Noah and Mark didn't need explanation anyway. Around Mark, Noah didn't have to perform. He didn't have to pretend to be someone he wasn't. He didn't have to soften parts of himself or hide behind the careful walls he had learned to build around Tate. With Mark, there was no complicated emotional chess game, no guessing what the other person meant, no constant fear of crossing some invisible line. He could simply exist, just a young man figuring things out. That might have been the best part about Mark, the openness. Mark didn't need Noah to be anything except honest. There were no strange rules, no power dynamics buried under years of shared history. Mark spoke plainly, listened plainly, and trusted Noah to do the same. And because of that, a different kind of closeness formed between them, not the intense, tangled bond Noah had with Tate, something simpler. Two people who recognized parts of each other, two people who understood certain struggles without needing long explanations, two people who could talk openly about things that the rest of the world, sometimes even Tate, treated like they were dangerous to say out loud. There were no secrets between them, not the heavy kind, just mutual understanding, but Tate would never see it that way. Tate would look at Noah and Mark standing too close, talking too easily, sharing quiet moments of laughter, and he would see competition. He would see a threat. He would imagine intimacy where there was simply honesty. Tate's world had always been built on control and guarded truths. And when you lived inside that kind of world long enough, the idea of two people simply knowing each other without games, without secrets, looked almost suspicious. Mark's red coat wasn't just a piece of clothing, it was psychological warfare, a quiet, cutting reminder of Tate's childish, possessive antics. Nobody else would ever understand what it meant, and that was the brilliance of it. Only Tate with his obsessive awareness would see it, recognize it, and spiral. I had worn it the day I met Mark in the cinema, and even then the weight of its significance had sunk deep into the unspoken tension of the room. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive. It didn't need to be. It whispered, provoked, and teased in a way that only Tate's mind could overanalyze. The color alone was enough: red like fire, red like danger, red like the heart of the thing he could never control. Every time it brushed across my shoulder or caught the light, it carried a private message that only he could read. You are powerless over this, and you never will be. Around people like Tate, subtlety was survival. Bluntness would trigger his fury, but suggestion, implication, the tiniest signal that only he could interpret, that was armor. The red coat was our shield and our weapon at once. Mark and I didn't need to speak a word. The psychological tension it created, the invisible chess game it set up in Tate's head, was enough. It reminded him that his jealousy, his possessiveness, his obsession, his attempts at control, they were meaningless in this quiet, unspoken battlefield. And that was the only way to survive with people like Tate: precision, subtlety, and psychological dominance. The red coat wasn't just fashion, it was a strategy, it was revenge, it was freedom. As the poets would say, my love for Tate had run its course. Time and truth had weathered what once felt like a living thing. The garden I had tended so carefully, the one I thought might bloom forever, had withered under realities I could no longer ignore. The flowers had died slowly then all at once, and somewhere in that quiet decay, I had fallen out of love with him. It was Tate's loss that I finally believed him and turned my attention towards other guys. Because the truth underneath it was uglier, I didn't feel free, I felt empty. I told myself I wasn't in love with Tate anymore, and yeah, on the surface it felt fucking great. There was a sharp, almost dizzying relief in deciding I was done, in cutting him out of the softest parts of me like something infected. I was going to take everything I had ever poured into him, all that attention, all that care, all that quiet devotion, and give it back to myself. Every ounce of love I had wasted would finally have somewhere safe to land. None of it would reach Tate anymore. Not a single drop. He didn't deserve it because Tate didn't notice who I really was. Love doesn't disappear cleanly. It doesn't die the moment you decide it should. It lingers in the silence after, in the habits you forget to break, in the way your chest still tightens at his name even when you swear it means nothing now. It fades maybe, it weakens, but it doesn't leave without taking something with it. And what it had taken from me, I could already feel the absence. So yeah, I fell out of love with Tate, but it didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving something that had quietly destroyed me anyway. What changed inside Tate and Noah's odd relationship was their power dynamic. For the first time, Noah had information Tate didn't. He had a relationship that Tate couldn't fully see into. Conversations that happened outside Tate's reach. Parts of his life that weren't organized around Tate's reactions or rules. That alone changed the board placement. Mark gave Noah something he had never really had before: perspective, space. A way to step slightly outside the tight orbit of Tate's influence and see their relationship more clearly, and with that space came autonomy. Would everything they had collapse under the weight of honesty? Noah didn't know, and until he knew, the ambiguity protected him. Using Mark as a kind of shield allowed Noah to exist without explaining himself. Tate's jealousy and assumptions created a strange sort of cover. As long as Tate believed Mark represented some kind of romantic threat, Noah never had to define anything clearly. He could simply live. He could talk to Mark openly, without pretending to be straight, without hiding parts of himself behind awkward silences. He didn't have to build walls in those conversations. He didn't have to perform. With Tate, everything was complicated. With Mark, everything was clear. And that difference gave Noah something he had never truly had before: agency. For years, he had moved carefully through Tate's world, trying not to disrupt the delicate balance that kept them together. Now, for the first time, he had leverage even if Tate didn't realize it. The irony was almost poetic. Tate had spent years controlling the narrative between them. Now Noah simply allowed uncertainty to exist, and in that uncertainty he found freedom. Karma had finally arrived in Tate's life, and it wrapped itself around Noah's shoulders in a red jacket. For years, Tate had taken Noah for granted in ways he barely even recognized. Noah had always been there, steady, loyal, orbiting him with the quiet certainty of someone who wasn't going anywhere. Tate had grown used to that permanence. It had become the background truth of his life, like gravity or the sunrise. Noah would always be there, until suddenly he wasn't quite so predictable anymore. Mark changed that. Mark was Tate's karma for assuming Noah had no other options, for believing Noah's devotion meant he would always wait patiently for whatever scraps of attention Tate decided to offer. Mark was living proof that Noah existed in a larger world, a world full of people who saw him, who wanted him, who valued him without hesitation. And Tate knew it. That was the worst part. Tate knew Mark wanted Noah. Whether Tate admitted it out loud or not, he could see it in the way Mark looked at him, in the quiet confidence Mark carried whenever Noah's name came up. Mark didn't hide his interest. He didn't tiptoe around Tate's feelings or pretend he wasn't a factor. Mark simply existed, and that existence drove Tate insane. Because the one thing Tate couldn't know, could never be certain about, was how far that interest would go. He didn't know if Mark would eventually convince Noah to sleep with him. He didn't know if Mark's presence would slowly shift Noah's loyalty over time. He didn't know if one day Noah might wake up and realize there were easier, healthier relationships in the world than the complicated one he shared with Tate. The uncertainty gnawed at him, and Noah realized something quietly powerful. Tate's imagination was doing half the work for him. The love Tate imagined Noah had for Mark, whether it existed or not, gave Noah something he had never possessed before: a head start power. For once, Tate wasn't the one controlling the emotional landscape between them. For once, Tate was the one reacting, second-guessing, watching for signs he couldn't fully interpret, and Noah could feel the shift. It wasn't about hurting Tate, it was about balance. For the first time, Noah felt like he had the space to become someone outside the version of himself that had always existed in Tate's shadow. If Tate believed Mark represented a different path for Noah, someone more confident, more independent, more self-directed, then maybe Noah could lean into that perception. Maybe it was time to change things. Noah found himself studying that, not to become Mark, but to understand the kind of presence Mark had. If Noah changed his hairstyle, something sharper, more intentional, Tate would notice. Tate always noticed details about Noah. A shift in wardrobe would do the same thing, clothes that looked more deliberate, more grown-up, less like the version of Noah that had quietly revolved around Tate for years. It wasn't about vanity. It was about the signal. If Noah looked different, if he carried himself differently, Tate would be forced to confront something he had never fully acknowledged before. Noah was capable of evolving without him. The message didn't need to be spoken. Tate would see it. Every new jacket, every change in style, every small shift in confidence would whisper the same idea Tate feared most. You don't control everything about me. For years, Tate had shaped the rules of their relationship simply by existing at its center. Now Noah was stepping slightly outside that orbit, and even small changes would ripple through Tate's carefully constructed sense of stability. And maybe that was part of the karma, too, because Tate had always assumed Noah would remain the same person forever. But people changed. They grew. They discovered pieces of themselves that had been waiting quietly for the right moment to emerge. Mark hadn't created that change. He had simply shown Noah that it was possible. And for the first time in his life, Noah was curious to see who he might become if he stopped letting Tate define the boundaries of that transformation. But now that certainty had cracks in it. Mark was the crack. Not because Mark had actually taken anything from Tate, but because Tate believed he might. And belief, Noah was learning, could be more powerful than reality. Tate's imagination was doing most of the work already. In Tate's mind, Mark had influence, Mark had access, Mark had proximity. Every time Noah mentioned his name or answered one of those evening phone calls, Tate filled in the blank spaces with stories of his own making. Stories where Mark mattered more than he actually did. Stories where Noah might be drifting away. And Noah realized something quietly fascinating. If Tate was already building that narrative, Noah didn't have to correct it. In fact, letting Tate believe it might be the clearest way to establish something Noah had never truly possessed in their relationship before: autonomy. For years, the way Noah dressed, the way he moved through their shared space, even the small routines of his life had unconsciously been shaped around Tate. Not because Tate explicitly demanded it, but because Noah had always been oriented toward him, always measuring himself against the quiet gravity of Tate's expectations. But if Tate believed Mark had influence over Noah now, then Noah could use that belief like a lever. The first step would be small: clothes. Noah found himself thinking about it one evening while looking through his closet. Most of what he owned felt like an extension of the version of himself that had grown up around Tate: comfortable, familiar, predictable. Safe. But Mark had a different kind of presence. There was an ease to the way he carried himself, the way he dressed, in a quiet confidence that didn't seem to depend on anyone's approval. It wasn't flashy or dramatic, just intentional. Deliberate. Noah didn't want to become Mark, but he liked the idea of looking a little more like someone who had chosen his own style rather than simply grown into whatever had always been there. So he started imagining the changes: a sharper haircut, clothes that felt more adult, more self-directed, jackets that actually made a statement, shirts that looked like they belonged to someone who had stepped outside the small, predictable orbit of his old life. And the beauty of it, the part that made Noah almost smile, was that Tate would absolutely assume where the influence had come from. In Tate's mind, those changes would be obvious. Mark had gotten into Noah's life. Mark had gotten into Noah's head, maybe even into his closet. The thought would irritate Tate endlessly, but Noah wouldn't need to confirm or deny it. The clothes themselves would say enough. Every new jacket or haircut would stand there quietly in the room like a message Tate couldn't ignore: you don't control this anymore. And Noah realized something else too: the dorm itself was part of the stage. For years, their shared space had reflected the strange balance between them, two lives overlapping so completely that it was hard to see where one ended and the other began. Tate's presence dominated the atmosphere simply because he had always been the one with the stronger personality, the clearer sense of authority. But that could change too. Noah imagined it almost like a chess move: a photograph here, maybe one on a shelf casually placed among other things. Another was tucked onto a corkboard or desk, nothing dramatic, nothing confrontational, just enough that Tate would notice. Pictures of Mark. Not romantic ones, not anything that actually confirmed the stories Tate's mind was spinning. Just moments, Mark standing somewhere, laughing, existing in Noah's world. That alone would be enough, because Tate would see them and immediately read meaning into them. In Tate's mind, those photos would represent influence, presence, a growing foothold in Noah's life. Every time Tate glanced at one, he would feel the same sharp irritation. Mark was inside a space Tate had once assumed belonged entirely to him. And Noah wouldn't have to say a word. That was the brilliance of it. For years, Tate had held all the hidden knowledge in their relationship. Tate understood things Noah didn't, carried secrets Noah wasn't allowed to see. Noah had lived inside that imbalance without fully realizing how much it shaped their dynamic. Tate thought, what were they talking about? How often were they talking? What exactly had Mark become to Noah? Tate sat there pretending to read the newspaper while the quiet sound of Noah's voice drifted down the hallway. Every laugh felt like a needle. Every pause felt like a secret. And for the first time in years, Tate realized something that made his stomach churn. He didn't know everything about Noah's life anymore. That was the moment the jealousy truly began, not explosive, not obvious, just a slow, suffocating pressure that grew heavier every day. Because every new shirt, every new photo, every quiet phone call reinforced the same terrifying idea: Noah was building a life Tate didn't control, and Tate had no idea how to stop it. The phone rang just as I was starting to make dinner, the shrill tone cutting through the quiet hum of the dorm. Tate's expression immediately soured, the practiced scowl settling across his face as he snatched it up. "It's for you," he said, voice tight, handing me the phone like it was an obligation rather than a convenience. His eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second, the recognition of the caller already sparking some irritation I couldn't see but could feel. "Thanks," I muttered, taking it carefully, letting the conversation begin before he could really process who was on the other line. "Hey Mark, what's going on?" I asked, keeping my tone casual, masking the little thrill running under my skin. "No problem," Mark said lightly, and we fell into easy conversation, sharing quiet updates and small jokes, the kind of back and forth that felt natural and grounding. Tate settled himself in the living room, the rustle of a newspaper breaking the rhythm of the room, his presence looming but not interfering. I could hear the paper crinkle as he shifted, flipping pages, a small, controlled noise that marked his occupation. Minutes passed and I kept talking to Mark, letting the voice of someone outside Tate's obsessive orbit fill the space around me. Tate eventually got up, heading toward the bedroom to change clothes. His movements were casual, but as he passed my side of the room, his gaze flicked toward the closet, and I could see him freeze just for a heartbeat. Tate wanted every photo of Mark gone, every single one. He couldn't stand the sight of him, not anymore, not after today. That red coat in particular burned into his vision like something cursed, a bright mocking symbol of everything Tate refused to name out loud. It wasn't just a coat, it was Mark's presence, Mark's closeness, Mark's claim, real or imagined, on Noah. And to Tate, it felt like salt ground deep into an already open wound. Every time he pictured it, that flash of red against Noah's world, it twisted something ugly in his chest, something sharp and possessive and impossible to ignore. So the coat had to go, the photos had to go, all of it. Because as long as they existed, so did the reminder that Noah's life wasn't something Tate could control, and that was a reality he couldn't stand to look at, not even for a second. "No, you can't just have this," Tate hissed, eyes blazing, chest heaving. His hands trembled not with exhaustion but with the intensity of his jealousy. Every imagined scenario of Noah turning toward someone else, moving freely, existing without Tate's presence, was amplified into 1,000 sharp knives in his mind. Noah froze, eyes wide, fully aware of the storm raging in front of him. Tate's rage wasn't playful. It wasn't teasing, it was pure, all-consuming obsession. He could barely breathe, could barely think beyond the coil of jealousy twisting in his chest. "You think you can just wear it, move in it, exist in it, without me?" Tate growled, voice low, trembling with anger and fear. "You don't understand, you can't understand what this does to me." It happened before I could process it. One second, Mark's coat sat on my shoulders, heavy, unfamiliar, carrying the faint scent of earth and cold air. And the next, Tate was in front of me, his hand closing around the collar as it offended him just by existing. Tate wanted that coat off Noah's shoulders and started pulling on its sleeves. "Take it off," he said, his voice low and sharp. I barely had time to react.
Tate.
He yanked it, I resisted, so he pulled harder, shaking my body violently. Tate grunted, tugging with panting wind. He would not give, regardless of my body attempting to shove his hands off my shoulders. The fabric tightened against my throat as the coat was ripped off my shoulders, the sudden cold hitting my skin where warmth had been seconds before. I stumbled back slightly, catching myself as he held the coat in both hands, staring at it like it was something alive, something wrong.
His.
That thought pulsed through Tate's mind, immediate and absolute. Why is he wearing something that isn't mine? Who gave him this? Who thinks they can? Whose is this? Tate demanded, though his tone made it clear he already knew. I didn't answer, I didn't need to, the silence was enough. Something in his face hardened, then fractured into something more volatile. Before I could step forward, before I could calm him down, his hands tightened and he started tearing it apart. Not tossing it aside, not dropping it, destroying it. The sound of ripping fabric cut through the air, loud and violent as the sleeve tore free in his grip. He pulled again, harder this time, splitting seams, unraveling stitching like he was erasing it piece by piece. Tate, stop, I said, stepping closer, reaching for his arm. He shifted, not even looking at me but blocking me anyway. No. The word was flat, final. He wore it, Tate thought, his jaw tightening as he ripped again, the lining giving way under his hands. He let someone else put something on him, someone else thought they could, another tear, threads snapped, fabric split. It didn't even look like a coat anymore. I stood there watching it fall apart, something tight and strange forming in my chest. Not just shock, something deeper. Something I didn't want to name. It's just a coat, I told myself. It shouldn't matter, but it did, because it wasn't about the coat, it was about him. Tate didn't stop until there was nothing left but shredded pieces, patches of fabric hanging uselessly in his hands. He stood there for a second, breathing hard, staring down at what he'd done like it still wasn't enough. Then abruptly he let it fall. The remains hit the floor in soft, broken pieces. Silence followed, heavy, pressing. I opened my mouth, but before I could say anything, Tate was already moving again. His hands went to his own jacket. For a second I didn't understand what he was doing, until he shrugged it off his shoulders, the dark, expensive fabric catching the light as it slipped free. Tate doesn't share. The thought hit me instantly, not like this. Even as kids he had rules. He'd hand me things from his closet, shirts, sweaters, anything untouched, unworn, clean, unclaimed. He never gave me something he'd already worn, something that carried him, never until now. He stepped closer, closing the distance I hadn't realized had formed between us. Without asking, without hesitating, he lifted the jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders. The fabric was warm, not just warm his, it settled over me like a weight, like a claim. Wear mine, Tate said quietly. His hands lingered for a second at my shoulders, adjusting the collar, smoothing it down like he needed to make sure it sat right, like he needed to see it there, on me. There he thought something inside him was settling just slightly, that's better. I didn't move, didn't speak, I just stood there feeling the difference, the way his jacket fit, the way it carried his heat, the way it felt intentional in a way the other coat never had. You didn't have to do that, I said finally, my voice quieter than I intended. Tate's jaw tightened slightly. Yeah, I did. I looked at him, really looked this time, trying to read what sat beneath the surface of his expression. It was just a coat. His eyes flicked to mine, sharp, immediate. No, it wasn't. The words came out low, controlled, but there was something under them, something raw he wasn't letting through. You don't get it, Tate thought, watching me, searching my face for something. You don't see what it means when someone else touches what's mine, when someone else thinks they can step into our space. I swallowed slightly, the weight of his jacket pressing into me, grounding and suffocating all at once. You don't share your clothes, I said, more observation than a question. Something in his expression shifted. I don't, he agreed. There was a pause, then quieter, more deliberate. Not like that. Not like this, not unless it matters, Tate thought, though he didn't say it. I understood that much. This wasn't casual, this wasn't convenient, this was something else, something heavier. Tate doesn't want anyone dressing me except him. The realization settled in, slow and undeniable, not physically, not symbolically either. My fingers brushed the edge of the jacket, feeling the fabric between them, And I let him. That was the part I couldn't ignore. I let him. Next time, Tate said, his voice quieter now but still firm, you don't take very important things from other people. If you need something, you come to me. I exhaled slowly, the words sitting between us. That's not how it works, Tate. His gaze didn't waver. It is for us. Silence stretched again, neither of us moved. The shredded remains of the other coat sat on the floor between us, forgotten but not irrelevant. Because whatever that had been, it wasn't about fabric, and whatever this was now, it wasn't simple. Not even close. Noah didn't move, he didn't fight, he didn't cry. He let Tate's storm pass over him, watching, observing, understanding that the rage wasn't about Noah, it was about the fire burning inside Tate, the fear of losing control, the terror of watching someone he loved exist independently. The coat lay in tatters in the corner and Tate's hands were shaking, chest heaving. His eyes burned with a combination of triumph and panic. He had asserted himself, had destroyed the symbol of Noah's independence, but the storm inside him was far from over. Tate's jealousy wasn't satisfied, it couldn't be, and he knew deep down that the coat's destruction hadn't quelled the fire, it had only made it grow. Tate's mind twisted the truth into something sharper, something harder to ignore. His truck, his, felt like it wanted to belong to someone else, to Mark. That thought alone was enough to make his jaw tighten, rage simmering just beneath the surface. It wasn't logical and he knew it, but it didn't matter. It felt real. Everywhere he looked, Mark was there, inserting himself into spaces he didn't belong in, into their space. The bedroom wasn't safe anymore. There was a photo of Mark sitting casually by Noah's bedside like he had every right to be there. The red coat Noah wore, Tate's eyes lingered on it every time, wasn't his either. It belonged to Mark. Even something as simple as fabric wrapped around Noah's shoulders felt like a claim Tate couldn't erase. Each detail piled onto the next, feeding something darker in him. He's everywhere, even when he's not here, he's here. Tate's jealousy coiled tighter with every glance, every reminder. It wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't just about the check. It was about presence, about ownership, about influence, about who Noah chose when it really mattered. And in Tate's mind, the answer was becoming unbearable. Even my truck, even that feels like it would choose him. The thought made his chest burn, like everything he had, everything he was, could be replaced. That Mark, with his quiet presence and easy wealth, could slip into Tate's life and take what he'd built without even trying. Noah shifted slightly beside him, unaware of the storm building just inches away. Tate's gaze flickered toward him, searching, almost desperate beneath the anger. Are you settling for me? The question hit harder than anything else. Harder than the check, harder than the coat, harder than the photo sitting there like a silent accusation. Or are you just afraid to lose me, your rich sponsor? The word sponsor tasted bitter in his mouth, something ugly and corrosive. Because if that was true, if Noah stayed not out of love but out of convenience, out of fear of losing security, then none of this meant anything. Not the money Tate offered, not the control he fought to maintain, not even the way he felt like he'd burn the world down just to keep Noah safe and close. Tate's hands clenched at his sides, nails biting into his palms. Tate thought, I give you everything, and Mark still lingers. The jealousy didn't just sit in him, it consumed him, turning every object, every memory, every quiet moment into proof that he was losing something he refused to let go of. And the worst part, he didn't know if Noah even realized it. There was a quiet confidence in the way Mark dressed, the way he presented himself, the way he moved through a room without seeking permission from anyone. Noah found himself studying that, not to become Mark, but to understand the kind of presence Mark had. Maybe that was part of the karma, too, because Tate had always assumed Noah would remain the same person forever. But people changed. They grew, they discovered pieces of themselves that had been waiting quietly for the right moment to emerge. Mark hadn't created that change. He had simply shown Noah that it was possible. And for the first time in his life, Noah was curious to see who he might become if he stopped letting Tate define the boundaries of that transformation. But now that certainty had cracks in it, Mark was the crack, not because Mark had actually taken anything from Tate, but because Tate believed he might. And belief, Noah was learning, could be more powerful than reality. I returned to our dorm room, carefully putting a few things back where they belonged. Every movement felt deliberate, measured, like walking through a minefield. The phone rang again, sharp and insistent, slicing through the suffocating tension in the dorm. Noah lunged for it, fingers brushing the receiver, but Tate's grip was immediate and overwhelming. He pressed himself over Noah, chest heavy, limbs braced on the floor, pinning him completely. Noah twisted, squirmed, gasping, but Tate's weight held him down with an almost predatory intensity. "I can't, Tate, I'm suffocating," Noah gasped, struggling beneath him. Tate's eyes burned wide with obsession and fury. "No, not now, not you, not anyone else," he hissed, voice tight with panic. "I won't let it happen, not while I'm here." Tate's thighs and hands held Noah down below his body, not with violence or control but by jealousy and a love that refused to concede to Mark. Noah's fingers brushed the receiver again. Tate's panic twisted into a hot, suffocating rage. His chest heaved. His hands shot out, slamming onto the desk, grabbing the phone cord. He yanked it, and the receiver tore from the wall with a loud, jagged rip. The shrill sound echoed through the dorm, bouncing off the walls like a gunshot, and Tate's pulse hammered in his temples. The phone dangled, useless, the wires snapping free, but Tate wasn't satisfied. He pressed harder against Noah, chest flush with adrenaline, jaw tight, eyes wild. "Do you think you can just reach out without me knowing?" he hissed, teeth gritted. "Do you think you can exist with anyone else, without me seeing, without me controlling it?" Tate held Noah's body to his chest, shaking him and holding the blonde's form under his weight. Noah's limbs flailed beneath him, twisting, trying to push free. "Tate, you're hurting me, stop, let me up." Tate's grip shifted so as not to hurt the blonde. Every imagined scenario, the phone call, Noah smiling at someone else, touching someone else, existing without him, was a blade twisting in his chest. The red coat, the calls, the autonomy, the freedom, it all combined into a hurricane of jealousy he could neither name nor contain. "You don't understand what this does to me," Tate growled, pressing his forehead against Noah's shoulder. "Every second you breathe, looking at others, every second you move away from me, it's like a knife in my chest." Noah froze for a moment, wide-eyed and aware, letting the storm of Tate's obsession wash over him. Tate wasn't playful. He wasn't teasing. He was consumed, dominated by a fear so raw it made his body shake, made every muscle taut, made every heartbeat pound like war drums. Tate's hands clamped down, digging into the carpet on either side of Noah's shoulders. His chest pressed down, weight suffocating, relentless. He wanted to crush the symbol of Noah's independence, to erase the red coat, the phone, and the evidence of a life Tate could not touch. He needed to assert presence, to reclaim control in a way that felt absolute. "Do you even realize what you're doing?" Tate hissed, voice trembling with panic and anger. "Every move you make, every breath, every little reach, it's ripping me apart." He pressed harder, chest crushing against Noah, forehead nearly pressed to Noah's collarbone. The phone's destruction didn't ease the storm inside him, it fueled it. Every imagined interaction, every imagined moment Noah might spend with someone else, multiplied into 1,000 sharp knives in Tate's mind. "Do you understand?" Tate growled. "You don't get to just reach out, exist outside me. You don't get it, you never will." Noah's eyes met his, wide with tension and alarm, but he stayed calm. He let Tate's obsession wash over him, recognized the depth of the storm, the totality of Tate's jealousy. The physical dominance, the tearing of the phone, the suffocating weight. Tate's obsession was so absolute, so intense that Noah didn't need to resist too much. It only showed Tate the limits of his own control. Tate's chest heaved, fingers trembling, voice hoarse. He pressed his forehead harder, almost crushing it into Noah's shoulder. I can't let anyone take you away from me, even a phone call, even someone else. Not Mark, not anyone. You're mine, I want to be yours, and I won't lose you." The wires dangled, the receiver lay cracked on the floor, and Tate's breathing was ragged. He wasn't satisfied. He couldn't be. The storm inside him, the jealousy, the obsession, the panic, it wasn't about objects. It was about Noah, about autonomy, about the fear that anyone could exist close to him who wasn't Tate. And still, Noah stayed beneath him, calm but tense, letting the storm rage, letting Tate's obsession define itself in a way only Noah could witness. "Tate lay over me, his weight careful but unyielding, as if he loosened his grip even slightly I might slip away for good. Beneath the surface of his control was something far more fragile, terror. He was terrified I would leave, terrified I would replace him with someone easier, softer, less demanding. His arms tightened just enough to hold me in place, like he was trying to change his little truck's mind about deserting the road they'd built together. I could feel it differently, though. To me, it pressed like fear, like a cage made of warmth and pressure, something I couldn't easily step out of. He won't let me go. He won't even imagine a world where I could. But underneath that suffocation there was something else, something harder to name. It wasn't just possession, it was fear sharpened into action. What drove Tate wasn't simple dominance. It was fierce, unrelenting love, the kind that didn't know how to exist without gripping tightly. Everyone who knew him might call him obsessive, might label him intense or controlling, but that wasn't the whole truth. Tate had stopped growing in the places that required trust. His emotional world had stalled somewhere along the line, leaving him stranded in a state where attachment felt dangerous, unpredictable, and almost impossible to survive. Didn't trust anyone, not fully, not ever, and yet, somehow impossibly I had slipped past all of that. Like a small, stubborn thing, I had gotten underneath the wire he'd built around himself, bypassed every defense he relied on, and lodged myself deep inside him. Not gently, not temporarily, but permanently. I was there, wedged tight against something vital, something he couldn't protect without also protecting me, right next to his heart, and that was what terrified him most. Tate didn't love anyone, or at least that's what he told himself, what he had trained himself to believe. He didn't need anyone either, not really. Not in the way other people seemed to. Money, sex, attention, power, none of it ever filled the space inside him for long. It all passed through, temporary, replaceable, forgettable. But there was one thing, one person he couldn't dismiss so easily. He needed his little truck, not in a way that made sense to anyone else, not in a way he could explain without sounding unhinged. He needed him there at night, close enough to feel, to hear breathing, to know without doubt that he hadn't disappeared, that he hadn't chosen someone else, that he was still there. Because when Tate attached, it didn't happen normally. It didn't grow slowly, carefully, with trust built over time. It either didn't happen at all, or it happened like this, too fast, too deep, too absolute. There was no middle ground for him. His attachment didn't feel like a connection. It felt like survival. Tate didn't love his little truck the way kids loved a favorite stuffed animal, something soft, interchangeable, meant to comfort. It wasn't childish and it wasn't simple. What he had found, what he had taken in, was something he believed deserved better. He had brought home a truck from a place he couldn't stand to look at for long, a trailer park, cramped and worn down, the kind of place that felt neglected, forgotten. In Tate's mind, no truck of his would ever belong somewhere like that. Not if he had anything to say about it. He wasn't cruel about it, he didn't parade it around or make a spectacle of what he'd done. Tate didn't bring people home, didn't expose his world to anyone, not because he was egotistical, but because he wasn't careless. He didn't take things lightly, especially not people. But something about Noah had broken that rule without permission. Something about him had made Tate bring him home, and over time it stopped being a choice. It became something else entirely. Tate's body adapted in ways he didn't understand and couldn't control. He grew dependent, physically, instinctively, on Noah's presence. It wasn't just emotional, it was deeper than that, wired into him. If Noah shifted in bed, Tate would wake. If Noah got up to use the bathroom, Tate's body would jolt into awareness before his mind could catch up. It was like losing something vital even for a moment. Because Noah didn't feel separate from him anymore, he felt integrated, like they were the same person split into two bodies moving in quiet synchronization, breathing the same air, existing on the same frequency. When Noah was there, Tate was steady. When he wasn't, something inside him slipped. And that was why Noah's 18th birthday felt wrong. It started one day before, subtle but undeniable. Something shifted. Something changed overnight, like a line had been crossed that Tate couldn't follow. Unbeknownst to Tate, this was the day the boys had gone to the library where Tate had met Emily. Noah was different, more independent, more distant, less his, and Tate felt it immediately, like a fracture running through something he had believed was unbreakable. He doesn't love me the same way. The thought settled, heavy and irreversible, because whatever Noah felt, it wasn't like this. It couldn't be. Tate hadn't been kidding when he told Noah he had platonically fallen in love, but even that didn't fully capture it. Tate didn't just love, he worshipped. Noah existed on a level above everyone else, untouchable, unquestioned. In Tate's mind, Noah could do no wrong, not truly. Even when Noah locked him out at night, Tate didn't blame him. He didn't even forgive him because forgiveness implied wrongdoing and Tate couldn't allow that. There was nothing to forgive, instead he reframed it. Noah wasn't wrong, he was drifting, becoming disobedient, rebellious, words Tate didn't just dislike but despised, especially when it concerned Noah. And worse, Noah had started to pull away in quieter, more devastating ways. He became secretive, shutting Tate out of parts of his life that had once been open. Conversations short, glances changed, and after that screaming match, something fundamental broke. Noah stopped saying "I love you." That silence cut deeper than anything else. Tate could endure defiance, he could endure distance, but that absence, that missing affirmation, felt like erasure. He'd rather sleep alone. The thought echoed, relentless. His little truck chose a cold, empty bed over the warmth of Tate's arms, over the closeness that had once been instinctive. It didn't make sense to him, it couldn't make sense. Because Tate had given him space. He had loosened his grip, allowed room, offered freedom, something that already went against every instinct he had, and look what Noah had done with it. He was strangling himself with it. There was only one thing left he needed to do, and I knew it was going to be the most fun I'd had in a long time. Noah went to sleep that night, letting the darkness settle around me, the quiet hum of the dorm filling the space. Every sound, the faint creak of the radiator, the distant shuffle of a cleaning cart in the hallway felt amplified as it belonged to a world where only I and Tate existed. I waited, at least an hour. Long enough to be certain Tate wasn't awake, long enough for the night to feel heavy and still, the kind of stillness that made him relax just enough to believe nothing could disturb it. I knew him well enough to understand how he tried to fall asleep, how he forced himself into stillness even when his mind refused, racing, calculating, obsessing over everything and everyone around him. I turned away from him on the bed, careful not to let him see my face. I wanted the reaction to hit him without the distraction of my expression. Every muscle in me was taut with anticipation, the kind of anticipation that comes from knowing exactly how much someone is going to notice, exactly how much impact a single moment can have. "Mark," I let it slip off my tongue, soft, deliberate, like a secret I'd been holding just for him. It was almost casual, but the weight behind it was anything but. I didn't have to say anything else. The name alone was enough. The bed jerked immediately. I felt it through the mattress, the subtle but unmistakable shift of weight, and then I heard him. The rustle of the covers, the sharp intake of breath, the tiny squeak of the mattress springs under the sudden pressure. He was sitting up in an instant, as if the name had hit him like a physical slap. Every small sound told me what had happened in his head. The sudden spike of alertness, the coil of his muscles, the rapid thump of his heart in the silence. He was wide awake, hyper-aware, every nerve in his body screaming in response to the one word I had uttered. I could hear Tate breathing, uneven, shallow, his body shifting in a mixture of confusion, jealousy, and instinctive calculation. I lay there, turned away, listening to every subtle motion, the scrape of his hand across the sheets, the way the mattress groaned as he adjusted, the faint shuffle as he leaned forward to get a better sense of the room. It was exquisite, pure, unspoken chaos, and it was mine to watch. Even without seeing him, I could feel the whirlwind of his thoughts, the scenario spinning, the questions forming, the tiny bursts of panic and speculation that raced through his mind. Was Mark here? Was Mark coming for him? Had I been thinking of Mark all day? Every heartbeat, every twitch of his body confirmed exactly what I had known would happen. The name had detonated inside him like a quiet bomb, precise, invisible, but devastating to his equilibrium. And as I lay there, calm and deliberate, I realized I had created something beautiful. A small, private rebellion that only I could orchestrate, a chaos that was subtle enough to leave no evidence but perfect enough to send Tate's imagination spinning. He didn't need to speak. I didn't need to see his face. The reaction, the tension, the sharp, silent electricity that crackled between us in that moment. It was everything I had hoped for, and I savored every second of it. Before I could even react, Tate leaned over, his hand snatching the sheet off my backside, and spanked me hard on my left ass cheek. The sting shot through me, and I jerked instinctively, forcing myself to act like I'd been asleep the whole time. "What is your problem?" I mumbled, keeping my voice low, still pretending to be half asleep. Tate didn't answer immediately. His jealous smirk was faint but sharp, the kind that made it clear he knew exactly what he was doing. "There was a mosquito," he said casually, as if that explained everything. I frowned, unsure whether to push it further. "Really?" I muttered under my breath, but Tate's eyes met mine for just a moment, and I could tell he wasn't lying. Well, not entirely. "Just go back to bed, Noah," Tate said, voice firm but carrying that unmistakable edge of amusement. "I did," I said, turning over angrily, letting the irritation simmer. But inside, I knew exactly what he was doing. It was a test, a push, a little jab to see how far he could go without breaking the rules he'd silently set for us, and I was already planning my next move. The phone rang 5 minutes after 6, loud and jarring, shattering the fragile quiet that had settled over the room. Tate's head snapped toward the sound, something volatile already flickering behind his eyes, as if the noise had struck a nerve that was already raw. Noah instinctively moved toward the phone. His steps hesitant but purposeful, wanting, needing, the distraction, the normalcy of answering it. Maybe it would break whatever tension had been building in Tate all evening. But before Noah could even reach the receiver, Tate was there, faster this time, cutting him off completely. The sudden movement made Noah's breath catch. Something's wrong, Noah thought, his chest tightening. He's not just annoyed, he's spiraling again. Tate's gaze dropped to a second red jacket draped over Noah's shoulders, Mark's jacket, and something in him snapped. His hand shot out, fingers clamping down hard on the fabric at Noah's shoulder, gripping it as if it had personally offended him. "Tate, what are you doing?" Noah asked, his voice small, uncertain, already trembling with the answer he didn't want to face. He tried to pull back slightly, instinctively protective, but Tate's grip only tightened. Noah's thoughts raced. It's just a jacket. Why does this bother him so much? Why does everything about Mark feel like it threatens him? His pulse quickened as he looked at Tate's face. There was no reasoning there, no softness, just raw, unfiltered jealousy. It's not a big deal," Noah tried again quietly, almost pleading now. "Tate, please."
Rip.
The sound was brutal, fabric tearing under the force of Tate's anger, echoing sharply off the walls like something breaking far beyond cloth. Noah flinched hard, his body instinctively recoiling as the jacket split under Tate's hands. His heart pounded. He's really doing this, he's actually destroying it. The reality hit all at once, heavy and suffocating. Tate wasn't just upset, he was consumed. "Take it off," Tate growled, his voice low, rough, and trembling with barely contained fury. Noah's breath hitched, a chill running through him despite the heat of the room. "Tate, stop," he whispered, but it lacked strength, lacked resistance, because a part of him knew when Tate got like this there was no stopping him. Tate didn't wait for compliance. He tugged hard on the torn fabric, yanking the jacket down Noah's arms with sharp, forceful movements. Noah stumbled slightly as it was stripped from him, left standing there feeling suddenly exposed, like something had been taken from him that wasn't just clothing. He wrapped his arms around himself instinctively, his thoughts spiraling. Why does he hate this so much? Is it really about Mark? Or is it about me? About control? About not wanting to share anything, not even a memory? "It didn't mean anything," Noah said quickly, the words rushing out as if they might calm the storm. "It's just a jacket, Tate, I wasn't," but his voice faltered when Tate didn't even look at him. Instead, Tate focused entirely on the ruined jacket in his hands. His breathing was uneven, almost ragged, as he tore into it again, then again, ripping the fabric in every direction like he needed to erase it completely. Threads snapped, seams split, and the red fabric, once whole, once meaningful, became nothing more than shredded pieces falling to the floor. It was messy, excessive, almost frantic in its intensity, and there was something unmistakably childish in the way he destroyed it, like a jealous tantrum he couldn't control or outgrow. Noah watched, frozen, his stomach twisting. "He's not even hearing me. I'm not even part of this right now. It's like he's fighting something that isn't here, or someone that isn't me." "Tate," Noah tried again, softer this time, almost afraid of the name on his own lips. "You're scaring me." The admission slipped out before he could stop it, raw and honest. For a moment he wondered if that would reach him, if anything could break through the haze of jealousy consuming him. But Tate only kept tearing until there was nothing left to tear, his anger blind and relentless, the jacket reduced to scraps in his hands. And Noah stood there, shaken, heart racing, realizing this had never really been about the jacket at all. Noah scrambled forward, reaching desperately for the torn pieces of his red coat, the shredded fabric slipping through his fingers. "You ripped the coat!" he cried, voice cracking, panic and frustration blending into one sharp edge. Tate's chest heaved as he watched Noah move toward the wreckage. His pulse slammed in his ears. Every desperate movement, every tiny gesture of longing for something outside Tate's control made the storm inside him swell, twisted it into something darker, more suffocating. "Noah, stop!" Tate barked, voice low and dangerous, trembling with anger and obsession. His hands shot out, catching Noah mid-step, gripping him firmly. The weight of Tate's presence pinned Noah against him as his mind spun in a cyclone of jealousy. "I said stop, you don't need any of this outside of me." Noah struggled, twisting slightly, trying to pull free, but Tate's hold was absolute. His heart hammered in fear and fury, and Tate's own heart raced with the panic of imagined betrayals. He wasn't just angry about the coat, he was terrified of what it represented, Noah existing outside his reach, letting someone else occupy even a fraction of his attention. "You don't understand," Tate hissed, voice trembling with barely restrained emotion. "Every time you reach for something, every little thing, it's like you're slipping away." Tate took a step closer, then another, his gaze locked onto Noah like he was trying to read something under his skin. "You wore it," he said finally, his voice low but no longer explosive, worse, quieter, edged with something cold. "You put it on, his jacket, in front of me." His grip tightened again around the torn fabric, knuckles paling. "Why?" The question wasn't simple curiosity, it demanded something, an explanation that could somehow undo what Tate felt, but nothing Noah could say would be enough. It never was when Tate got like this. "It didn't mean what you think," Noah said quickly, his thoughts scrambling, trying to find the right words, the safe words. I wasn't choosing him over you, Tate. I wasn't even thinking like that. It was just there and I. He stopped himself, realizing too late how that sounded. Just there, just easy, just natural. Tate's expression shifted again, something darker creeping in. Noah's stomach dropped. That made it worse. That made it so much worse. So, it's natural? Tate cut in, his voice tightening, jealousy sharpening every syllable. It's just easy for you to wear something of his, to keep him around like that? He let out a short, humorless breath, shaking his head. Do you think about him when I'm not here? The question landed harder than anything else, invasive and raw. Noah's heart stuttered. This isn't fair. This isn't about that. But Tate wasn't asking to understand, he was digging, pushing, needing to find something that justified the storm inside him. No, Noah said, but it came out too fast, too defensive. He forced himself to slow down, to soften. No, I don't, not like that. Tate, you're the one I'm here with, you're the one I chose to share my dorm. Even as he said it, he could feel how fragile the words were under the weight of Tate's emotions. Because choosing Tate had never erased everything else, it had only complicated it. And Tate could feel that, even if Noah couldn't explain it. Tate stepped closer until there was barely any space between them, his presence overwhelming, suffocating in its intensity. Then act like it, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, but it carried more force than his earlier shouting. Don't bring him into this, don't wear his shit, don't keep pieces of him on you like that. His jaw tightened, his eyes searching Noah's face for any hint of resistance, any sign that Noah might disagree and maybe even hopping for it just to have something concrete to fight against. Noah's thoughts spiraled. He doesn't just want the jacket gone. He wants everything gone, every memory, every trace. He wants all of me. The realization made his chest ache in a way that was harder to name. Because part of him understood Tate's jealousy, felt the intensity of it, the way it came from something real and desperate. But another part of him felt cornered, like the walls were closing in. Tate, you can't erase people, he said softly, the words slipping out before he could stop them. You can't just tear things away and expect everything to be different. That was the wrong thing to say. Tate's expression hardened instantly, the fragile thread of control snapping again. His hand dropped, the last pieces of the torn jacket falling to the floor, forgotten. Watch me, he said quietly, but the jealousy in his voice had turned into something deeper now, something more dangerous than anger. It wasn't loud anymore, it was rooted, possessive, unyielding, and Noah felt it settle in his chest like a warning he couldn't ignore. This wasn't just a moment, it wasn't just a tantrum. Tate's jealousy wasn't fading, it was growing, twisting into something that wasn't going to let go easily. Tate's gaze lingered on Noah for a long moment, something restless and unresolved flickering in his expression before he abruptly turned away. He moved to his closet, pushing past the hanging clothes with sharp, impatient motions until he pulled something out, a seal brown, cardinal red and white brown university jersey jacket. He came back without a word, holding it up for only a second before stepping in close again. Wear this instead, Noah, he said, his tone quieter now but still firm, leaving no room for argument. Before Noah could respond, Tate was already slipping the jacket onto him, guiding his arms through the sleeves with controlled, deliberate movements. It fit perfectly, like Tate had chosen it with intention, like he had imagined this moment. Noah glanced down at the fabric, their college colors, and felt a strange warmth in his chest. You bought this for me, he whispered, surprised and unsure. Tate didn't answer, only adjusted the collar slightly, his touch lingering, a quiet possessiveness replacing the earlier storm of jealousy. Noah's thoughts swirled, caught between relief, gratitude, and the undeniable weight of Tate's intensity. Without warning, Tate lifted Noah off the floor, holding him tight as if the very act could somehow reclaim control over the autonomy Noah had shown. He carried him toward the bed, setting him down carefully but firmly. His chest pressed against Noah's back as he settled him onto the mattress, lingering just long enough for the full weight of his obsession to press down. Noah's eyes widened, blinking rapidly as he tried to process the intensity of Tate's reaction. Tate, I'm not trying to. You don't get it? Tate cut him off, voice hoarse, trembling with emotion. You reaching for anything, anyone, even something as stupid as a coat. It's a reminder that you exist outside me, and I can't let it happen, not now, not like this. Noah froze under Tate, chest tight with a mix of fear, shock, and awe at the force of Tate's jealousy. The room was silent except for the ragged, heavy breathing of the boy above him, every exhale a storm of obsession, every heartbeat a drum of panic and control. Tate's hands rested on the mattress beside Noah's arms, keeping him firmly in place. His gaze, fierce and unrelenting, softened slightly as he whispered almost to himself, I can't lose you, not like this, not to anyone, not to anything. Noah's fingers twitched toward the shredded coat on the floor, but Tate's shadow loomed over him, an unspoken claim. The red fabrics of Mark's 2 red coats were gone, torn and scattered, but the storm of jealousy, the obsession, the suffocating need to dominate and protect, pressed down like a tangible weight, and Tate wasn't allowing anyone, especially that Mark, to come between their love. For Tate, this wasn't about punishment. It was about fear, panic, and a desperate desire to keep Noah contained, safe, but only in the way Tate could allow, only under his complete, suffocating vigilance. The coat was destroyed, but Tate's obsession, his relentless, all-consuming jealousy had only grown stronger. Noah lay there, heart pounding, understanding the full force of Tate's emotional storm. While Tate hovered above him, trembling with rage, panic, and fear, the shredded coat on the floor a symbol of everything Tate could not allow to exist outside his control. Tate's head rested on Noah's chest, pressed down with a weight that was equal parts desperation and obsession. His breaths came in sharp, ragged pants, each inhale and exhale trembling as if his body could barely contain the storm of emotion inside him. His hands clutched the mattress beside Noah, knuckles white, his forehead warm against Noah's shirt. Mark, he's affecting our relationship, Tate whispered, voice strained, almost strangled by panic. Each word was labored, a confession as much as a warning. His chest heaved against Noah's, every rapid heartbeat a drum of jealousy and fear. I can't stand it, him being around you, I can't think about you with anyone else. Noah lay still beneath him, feeling the weight of Tate's obsession, the raw intensity of a man utterly consumed by fear, panic, and jealousy. Tate wasn't playful or teasing, he was desperate, dominated by the idea that Noah could exist, even briefly, with someone else, and it was tearing him apart from the inside. Noah's fingers trembled as they brushed against Tate's arms, feeling the tension, the raw, desperate obsession radiating off him. Tate's panting grew harsher, more urgent, as if the very act of breathing could release the tidal wave of jealousy and panic that had consumed him for hours. I can't, Tate's voice broke into a hoarse whisper, almost a sob. I can't let him affect you, affect us, affect what's mine. You're mine, Noah, do you hear me? Mine. I can't survive losing that, not even for a second. Tate's hands dug into the mattress beside Noah's shoulders, fingers trembling, chest heaving against Noah's with suffocating intensity. His head stayed pressed close, heartbeat pounding against Noah's, as if by staying physically tethered he could somehow keep the chaos at bay, the imagined chaos of Noah existing, laughing, sharing space, or attention with someone else. Tate's hot tears slipped onto my cheek as he buried his face into my neck, his breath uneven, almost shaking. The heat of it startled me more than anything else. Tate didn't cry, not like this, not where I could feel it, not where I could witness it. His grip tightened instinctively, like even in that moment of vulnerability he couldn't risk loosening his hold on me. I'm the reason for this, I realized, the weight of it settling heavily in my chest. I'm the one who makes him this happy, and this afraid. Because for some reason, something neither of us could explain, something that didn't follow logic or fairness, I made Tate ecstatically, unimaginably happy. Not in a normal way, not in the way people talked about happiness like it was manageable, balanced, or something that came and went. This was different, this was consuming. It was as if I had filled a void in him that had been there his entire life, something he hadn't even known was empty until it wasn't anymore. And now that it was filled, even the idea of losing it, losing me, felt catastrophic. Being near me didn't just make him feel good, it stabilized him, anchored him, gave him something solid in a world he didn't trust, and being without me, even briefly, unraveled him. I could feel that truth in the way his body pressed into mine now, in the way he held on just a little too tightly, like he was reminding himself I was still there, still real, still his. And that was why Mark's presence wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a threat. Not a distant one, not a hypothetical one. A real, immediate danger to something Tate depended on in a way that went beyond reason. In Tate's mind, it simplified into something almost childlike but no less intense. Not a complicated relationship, not a matter of choice or independence, but ownership, certainty, like two boys fighting over the exclusive right to something already claimed, already his. Mark wasn't just another person, he was a man reaching for something that didn't belong to him, a boy who looked at Tate's truck with interest, with admiration, with want, someone who didn't just see value but believed he could offer something better, a different life, a better one. There was a reason Tate was too attached, why his feelings didn't settle into something normal, something manageable. It wasn't random and it wasn't shallow. It came from somewhere deeper, something unspoken that bled into everything he did, every decision, every reaction. It was why he didn't just care about Noah, he elevated him, placed him somewhere untouchable, something closer to a constant than a person, like a god. Not because Noah was perfect, but because Tate saw him as a perfect companion, needed him to be steady, reliable, immovable in a way the rest of the world had never been. That belief, fragile and absolute at the same time, held Tate together more than anything else ever had, and that was the part no one else saw. The secret underneath it all, Mark didn't understand it, couldn't. To Mark this was just attraction, interest, maybe even generosity, but to Tate it was something else entirely, something survival-based. So when Mark reached for Noah, when he inserted himself, lingered, offered things Tate didn't trust, it didn't feel harmless, it didn't feel like competition. It felt cruel, monstrous even, because Noah wasn't just someone Tate wanted, he was the one thing Tate needed. A life vest in a place where Tate had been drowning long before anyone noticed. Someone who kept him steady, grounded, functioning, the difference between holding it together and falling apart. And Mark, whether he realized it or not, was reaching for that, lusting after something Tate relied on just to stay afloat. That was what made it unbearable, because to everyone else it might have looked like jealousy. But to Tate it felt like someone was trying to take the only thing keeping him happy. Tate would fight like hell to keep Noah. There was no version of reality where he would allow someone like Mark to step in, to influence him, to convince him that he could belong anywhere else. Mark wasn't just an inconvenience, he was a threat. A threat to the one thing Tate valued more than anything, the one thing that made the chaos of his life manageable. The idea of Mark reaching for Noah, of pulling him away, of reshaping him, made something inside Tate twist with a rage he barely contained. Mark would not take what Tate had claimed, not the boy, not the attention, not the presence that tethered him to life in a way no one else could. Because what they had, what Tate and Noah had, wasn't static. It had shifted, evolved, changed form in ways neither of them could have foreseen. Their arrangement had begun as something physical, something manageable, something Tate could define on his own terms. But over time it had grown, it had deepened. It had become something intimate in ways that startled Tate, ways that made him want to hold on tighter, press closer, never let go. Tate had needed Noah's body, needed the heat, the closeness, the undeniable presence of someone he could touch and claim, but he had never dreamed of liking the boy beneath that body. He had never imagined that the mind, the quiet gestures, the unknowing fascination could trap him completely, could demand more than desire, could command every corner of his attention without effort or explanation. Noah had done it from the beginning, without trying, without meaning to, just existing. Clueless, attractive, and mesmerizing in ways that made Tate feel simultaneously powerful and helpless. Every glance, every careless movement, every small smile was a snare, and Tate fell willingly, every time. This boy, the very attractive, very unaware, his blonde boy, had become the diamond of Tate's life. Bright, rare, and impossible to ignore. Immutable in Tate's mind. Precious beyond measure. Not just a companion, not just someone to be used or admired. Something he could never replace, could never risk losing. And Noah didn't know. He didn't know the extent of what Tate had done to secure him, the invisible scaffolding of his world built around Noah's presence, the calculated moves Tate had made to keep him close. He had no idea how much Tate's life, his routines, his choices, and his own body had been reshaped to ensure Noah stayed. Tate Blue didn't merely want Noah. He had claimed him, held him, ensured that in ways Noah could never perceive, he belonged wholly to Tate. Because people like Noah didn't just drift into lives like Tate's and remain there untouched. They didn't arrive by accident or stay by chance. The distance between Noah's world and Tate's, the worlds they came from, the lives they led, was vast. Invisible lines divided them: class, upbringing, expectation, power, lines that others would not cross, lines that Noah never even saw. But Tate had crossed them deliberately, and not just crossed them. He had redrawn them, rewritten them, negotiated the rules of the world to make sure Noah could exist safely in his orbit on his terms, not to play, not to experiment, not to tempt fate, but to secure him, to protect him, to own their time together. And Tate didn't just do this quietly, he did it relentlessly. He built every plan, every decision, every precaution around Noah's life as if it were his own. Because in Tate's mind Noah wasn't just someone he loved or admired. He wasn't just a companion or a distraction or a bright spark in a dark world. Noah was the center, the axis, the reason the chaos could be endured, the reason he could function, the reason he could be alive at all. Mark could try, Mark could reach, Mark could tempt, coax, or sweet-talk, but Tate had already won before anyone knew the game existed. He had structured, maneuvered, controlled, and claimed, and that was why he would fight like hell. That was why there was no argument, no compromise, and no yielding. Noah wasn't just in his life. Noah was his life. And anyone who threatened that, anyone who lusted after it, anyone who even glanced in Noah's direction would find Tate waiting, unyielding, untouchable, and infinitely dangerous. Tate carried the weight of heteronormative expectations like a suit of armor he never wanted to wear. As the only son and heir to a vast fortune, everyone around him assumed he would marry, breed, and continue the blue lineage. It was unspoken yet omnipresent: produce heirs, secure the family name, and preserve the dynasty. Tate understood it all. He knew what was expected, but he hated it. He wanted none of it. He wanted to be a bachelor living alone with nothing but his little truck for company. To him, the idea of conformity, the endless parade of social obligations, the perfunctory courtship, the sterile rituals of family expectation was suffocating. He couldn't imagine tying himself to anyone out of duty or tradition. The thought of producing heirs felt alien, mechanical, and a betrayal of everything he valued in freedom, autonomy, and passion. And yet the pressure existed. The world demanded it, his family demanded it, even his own bloodline whispered its threats in quiet ways. To continue the blue legacy was not optional, it was inevitable, or so everyone said. Tate's instincts rebelled. Conformity made him want to tear down walls, not build them. Heterosexual expectation felt like a trap, a cage. All he wanted was control over his own life, and the only life he truly wanted to share it with without compromise, without rules, without obligation, was the one Noah had slipped into. Noah didn't demand lineage, didn't enforce duty, didn't expect Tate to bend to tradition. For the first time, Tate could imagine a life that didn't betray his instincts, a life defined entirely on his own terms, with his truck and Noah as the center of his universe and nothing else allowed to interfere. Tate's arrested development bled into everything, shaping the way he moved through the world and more specifically the way he held on to Noah. It wasn't loud at first, wasn't something you could point to easily, but it lived in the small rules he created, the quiet expectations he never fully explained. To Tate, anyone who got too close to Noah wasn't just a friend or a passing presence, they were a threat, a possibility, someone who might lure Noah away from the dorm, from the routine he'd built from him. The idea of losing me didn't exist as a distant fear. It was immediate, constant, something that sat under his skin and flared at the smallest shift. "You can have friends," Tate whispered one night, his voice low against the quiet of the room as we lay in bed, the darkness pressing in around us. His arm was draped across me, heavy and familiar, his presence anchored like it always was. "Have relationships, but they cannot impact you and me. I'm not saying you can't." I stayed still, staring up at the ceiling. I already knew there was more coming. There was always more. "But you come home every night," he added, quieter now but firmer. "You sleep next to me, no exceptions." The words didn't rise, they didn't need to. The certainty in them was enough. I let the silence stretch, feeling the weight of his arm, the quiet expectation underneath it. He thinks this is normal, I thought. He thinks this is reasonable. "You're setting rules," I said finally, my voice even, though something in my chest tightened. "I'm not," Tate replied immediately, too quickly. His fingers shifted slightly against me, pressing, grounding. "I'm just saying what works." "Say it right," Tate thought, irritation flickering beneath his calm tone. "Don't make it sound like control, he hates that." "What works for who?" I asked. "For us." The answer came without hesitation. I turned my head slightly, looking at him in the dark, trying to read the outline of his face. "That sounds like it works for you." A pause. His arm tightened, not enough to hurt, but enough to register. "It works because it keeps things the same," Tate said, more carefully now. "It keeps everything where it should be." "Where you should be," his mind corrected silently. "Here, with me, where no one else gets in." "And if I don't come back one night?" I asked. The question hung between us, quiet but sharp. Tate didn't answer right away. I could feel the shift in him, the way his body stilled. The way his breathing changed just slightly. He wouldn't, Tate thought immediately, he wouldn't do that, he wouldn't just leave. "You will," Tate said finally, his voice low. "That's not what I asked." Another pause, longer this time. His hand slid slightly against my side like he needed to remind himself I was still there. "Then you don't go somewhere you can't come back from," he said. Simple, clean, final. I let out a slow breath. He's not hearing me, I thought, or he is, and he's just deciding the answer anyway. That's not realistic, Tate. It is, he said, sharper now, you just don't want it to be. Because if it isn't, he thought, something colder slipping in beneath the surface, then I can't control it, and if I can't control it, I lose him. I shifted slightly under his arm, feeling the tension in him, the way it coiled tighter the longer we talked about this. You don't trust me, I said quietly. I trust you, Tate snapped immediately, defensively, then softer, quieter, I just don't trust other people. I don't trust anyone near you, he corrected silently. I don't trust what they want, I don't trust what they'll try. That's the same thing, I replied. No, it's not.
It is, Tate.
The room went still again. His grip tightened just slightly, his fingers pressing into my side like he was trying to hold onto something that wasn't physical. As long as I can come with you and spend time getting to know your friends, he said after a moment, his voice steadier now, like he was reworking the terms into something he could accept, and I'm primary, I won't prevent anything. You can have whomever you want around, I don't care about that. Primary, the word landed more heavily this time. You keep saying that, I murmured, primary. Because it matters. Why? Another pause. Tate shifted slightly behind me, his forehead brushing lightly against the back of my neck, his breath warm and uneven for a second before it steadied again. Because it means nothing changes, he said quietly. It means I'm still first, I'm still. He stopped, yours, his mind finished, but he didn't say it. I closed my eyes briefly. There it is, I thought, that's what this is. You're asking me to build everything around you, I said. I'm not asking, Tate replied. The honesty in that made something in my chest tighten. I'm telling you what works, he added, softer now, like that made it better. For you, I repeated. Silence settled in again, but it felt different now, denser, harder to sit in. And if you can't sleep alone, I asked again, more quietly this time. I felt it immediately, the shift in him, the tension snapping back into place. Then you don't go, he said. No hesitation, adjustment, or compromise, just a decision. I stared into the dark, feeling the weight of that settle over me. He really believes that, I realized. He doesn't even see the problem. Beside me, Tate's breathing slowly evened out again, like saying it had resolved something, like the answer itself restored order. His grip loosened just slightly, settling back into something that could pass as casual. It's simple, he thought, the logic clean and unchallenged in his mind. If I'm there, nothing changes. If I'm first, nothing changes. He stays, he doesn't leave. No one takes him. I exhaled slowly, the air leaving my chest heavier than it should have. This is how he keeps me, I thought, not by asking, not by trusting, by deciding what's allowed, and calling it normal. And the worst part, I didn't move, I didn't push him away, I didn't say no, because some part of me understood exactly what he was afraid of. And some part of me, quiet, buried, and just as stubborn, wasn't sure I wanted to prove him wrong. And if I refuse, I said quietly. The question didn't come out defiantly, it came out measured, careful, like I already knew I wasn't going to like the answer. Behind me, Tate exhaled slowly, the sound almost tired, like I'd missed something obvious, like I was making this harder than it needed to be. I'll have to return it, he said. I frowned slightly. Return what? There was a pause, just long enough to feel intentional. The green 1986 Rolls-Royce Corniche II, Tate said almost casually. The one you liked in the magazine. For a second I thought I misheard him. I turned my head slightly enough to look back at him. You what? I bought it today, he added, like it was nothing. Like he was talking about a jacket or a book or something small and replaceable. It's outside. I drove it home because your small used car is too old and unreliable during the winter. You need a nice set of wheels so your presence isn't missed at school due to engine issues. My mind stalled completely. The Rolls-Royce Corniche II, the number hit me next, hard, immediate. That car is worth, what, $120,000, I said, my voice sharper now, disbelief breaking through. Tate shrugged slightly behind me, his arm still draped over my waist like none of this was unusual. Around that, your license plate says Noah just like it should. My chest tightened, something between shock and frustration rising fast. You bought a luxury car, I said slowly, because I pointed at it in a magazine. You didn't just point, Tate replied. You stopped, you looked at it longer than anything else, you said you liked the color. I notice things, Tate thought, a quiet certainty settling in him. I notice everything about you. What do you look at? What are you hesitating over? What you don't ask for? That doesn't mean you go out and buy it, I said. Why not? The question was immediate, uncomplicated. Because that's crazy, it's insane, I almost said. Instead, I exhaled slowly, because that's not normal, Tate. He shifted slightly behind me, his grip tightening just enough to be felt. Normal doesn't matter, he said, it works. For what? For this. His hand pressed lightly against my side, anchoring me. For you staying, he added. The words landed heavier than anything else he'd said. I went still. There it is, I thought, that's the point. It's an incentive, Tate continued, his tone calm like he was explaining something reasonable. For you to behave, for you to come back every night. I let out a short, disbelieving breath. You think I can be bought? No, Tate said, there's no way I could buy you, you're too stubborn and headstrong to obey. Then, after a beat, but I think it helps everyone around us understand. Silence. I stared into the dark, trying to process the logic, the certainty behind it. He really believes this, I realized. He thinks this is how you keep someone. I like you, Noah, Tate went on, quieter now but more deliberate. And I always get what I want. His voice didn't carry arrogance, it carried fact. And sleeping next to you, he added, his arm tightening around Noah just slightly, is what I want. My chest felt tight again, but for a different reason now. This isn't about the car, I thought. It was never about the car. It was about certainty, about removing any variable that could take me away from him. You'd really return it, I asked after a moment. If you don't agree, but I'd probably just let you keep it, Tate said simply. No hesitation, no second thought, it's just an object, he thought. He's not. I shook my head slightly, more to myself than to him. You're talking about $120,000 like it's nothing. It is nothing, Tate replied. Another pause. Compared to you staying. That landed harder than anything else. I didn't respond right away. He's not even trying to manipulate me the way other people would, I realized slowly. He's not pretending, he's not dressing it up. He was just stating terms, clean, direct, unapologetic. You can't structure my life like this, I said finally, my voice quieter now. I already am, Tate said. No aggression, no anger, just truth. I closed my eyes briefly, and I let him, I thought. Behind me, Tate relaxed slightly, like the conversation had settled into something stable again, like he'd restored balance. He's still here, Tate thought, a quiet satisfaction threading through him. He didn't pull away, he didn't say no. My fingers curled slightly against the sheets. This is how he keeps me, I realized again, more clearly this time, not just with presence, but with weight, with things I can't easily walk away from. The car, the rules, him, and the worst part, I wasn't sure which one was hardest to leave. I won't be bought, Tate, I whispered. I know, instead I long to make you happier than you've made me, Noe. The words came out quieter than I intended, but they didn't waver. Behind me I felt him shift, not pulling away, not tightening, just adjusting, then a faint sound. A smirk, I could hear it before I saw it. A happy, satiated Noah. Tate said slowly, like he was testing the shape of the words, is a compliant, happy, and present Noah. My jaw tightened instantly. That's not. If it doesn't make you happy, he cut in smoothly, his voice calm, almost patient, I'll buy something that will. The certainty in his tone made something in my chest twist. He really thinks happiness is something he can engineer, I thought, something he can hand me, wrap around me, make me accept. I turned my head slightly enough to catch the edge of his expression in the dim light. You don't hear yourself, do you? I said. Tate's gaze didn't shift, if anything it steadied. I hear myself perfectly, he replied. He's resisting, Tate thought, watching me carefully. That's fine, he always does at first. He doesn't realize how easy it is to fix once I find the right thing. You're trying to control me, I said. I'm trying to keep things the way they should be. That's the same thing. It isn't, he said again, the same quiet insistence as before. I exhaled sharply, looking away. You can't just replace whatever this is with things, cars, clothes, whatever you think I'll like. That's not how it works.